My golden child, brother, they kicked me out of the house I paid for. Now they're begging me to save them because he abandoned them. But I came back as owner and put them under my rules. I'm 27 years old. I work in accounting at a mid-sized company. And I need to tell this story because basically only now, after a whole lifetime, do I feel like I finally have control over my own existence. What happened with my family over the last few years destroyed me in ways I didn't even know were possible. But in the end, I guess it was all worth it because now the house is mine. My parents are under my rules, and my brother Tyler can go screw himself. Sorry for the language, but when I think about everything I had to put up with just to get to this point, my blood boils. I should start at the beginning. When we were kids, Tyler is 4 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, he was the center of my parents' universe, especially my mom's. And when I say center of the universe, I'm not exaggerating even a little bit. Like, Tyler could do anything, whatever, and my parents would find a way to justify it or celebrate it as if he'd won a Nobel Prize. He got a C in math? Didn't matter. Math is hard. Poor thing. I got an A in all my subjects? Oh well. You've always found studying easy. It's no big deal. You know what I mean? It was that kind of constant dynamic, every day, in everything. I grew up basically invisible in my own house. My parents went to all of Tyler's soccer games, screamed like crazy from the stands. We'd go out to dinner afterwards to celebrate, the whole show. I played piano. I don't know if I mentioned that, and I was pretty good at it. I even won some regional competitions and everything. But my parents went to like 2 recitals total, and that was because my teacher specifically called to ask them to come. At one of those recitals, I remember my mom spent half the time texting because Tyler needed her to pick up something or other from the mall. I was like 12 years old when that happened, and I remember sitting at that piano thinking, why do I even try so hard if nobody cares? Things continued like that for years. Tyler went to college, an expensive private one in Virginia. And my parents sold my dad's car to help pay for his first year because apparently the scholarships didn't cover everything, and Tyler needed the full college experience. When I got to college 2 years later, they told me I'd have to get student loans because they didn't have extra money anymore. I mean, seriously? So anyway, I went to a state university in North Carolina, lived at home to save money, and worked part-time throughout college. I graduated debt-free, which was good, I guess, but my whole college experience was like go to classes, work, sleep, repeat. No social life, no full experience. Tyler graduated. It took him 6 years, by the way, and moved to Austin with his girlfriend Victoria. Victoria was pretty, very quiet. She was always nice to me the few times I saw her. My parents were obsessed with her. My mom constantly talked about when Tyler and Victoria were going to give them grandkids, when they were getting married, blah, blah, blah. They got married in 2019, a huge wedding that cost like $40,000, of which my parents paid half because it's tradition for the bride's parents to pay. But we want to contribute anyway, because Tyler is our son. I wasn't even part of the wedding. Tyler had his college friends as groomsmen. I was invited, obviously, but I was basically just another guest. After I graduated in 2020, right when the whole pandemic started, my parents asked me to stay home a while longer. They had recently retired. My dad worked in construction, and my mom was a dental assistant. And with their pensions, they could live, but things were tight. They told me, stay here, save your money. It doesn't make sense for you to pay rent somewhere else when there's room here. And then my mom dropped something that changed everything. Someday this house is going to be yours anyway, so think of it as your investment. I remember that moment perfectly because I felt like finally, after a lifetime of being the second choice, my parents were acknowledging me, you know? So I stayed. I got a good job in accounting, started earning a decent salary, and since I was living at home, I began helping with expenses. At first, it was just like $300 or $400 a month for groceries and utilities, but over time, I was basically paying for everything. The mortgage was like $1,200 a month, plus utilities, internet, cable, groceries, house maintenance, everything. I was easily paying $2,500 a month, but I didn't care because the house was going to be mine eventually, or that's what they'd told me over and over and over again. My parents didn't work. They were retired and happy. They'd travel occasionally to visit Tyler in Austin, always came back with stories about how amazing his life was there, how successful he was, blah, blah, blah. Tyler worked in sales or something. I never really understood what he did, but my parents talked about him like he was the CEO of Apple. Meanwhile, I was literally supporting my parents, and when I'd mention that, my mom would say things like, "Well, but you're living here rent-free. It's only fair." Which was an absolute lie because I was paying for everything, but whatever. This went on for 3 years. 3 full years where I worked, paid all the bills, lived a super boring and simple life, all while Tyler was in Texas, living his best life without contributing absolutely anything to the family. Up to that point, I was okay. Like, not happy, but tolerating it because I thought I was securing my future, you know what I mean? The house would eventually be mine. My parents would be fine. It all made sense in my head. Then came March 2023, like 2.5 years ago. On a Sunday night. I was watching TV in the living room when my parents sat down with me with those serious faces you make when you're going to have an important conversation. My mom started with her typical preamble of, "We need to talk about something," and I immediately knew I wasn't going to like what was coming. They told me that Tyler and Victoria were thinking about moving back to North Carolina, that Tyler had received a job offer here or something, and that they might need to stay at the house for a while until they found their own place. I said, "Well, the house has 3 bedrooms, mine, yours, and the guest room, so I guess they could use the guest room temporarily." My mom was quiet for a moment, and then dropped the bomb. "Well, actually, we were thinking it might be better if you looked for your own apartment. Tyler and Victoria need space, and you're already 25. It's time for you to be independent." I just sat there, processing what I'd just heard. Were they seriously asking me to leave the house that I had been paying for 3 years, so that my brother, who had never contributed anything, could move in? I tried to stay calm and ask them, "Well, is Tyler going to start paying the bills then? Is he going to take over the mortgage and expenses?" My dad, who almost never speaks in these conversations, said no. That Tyler was going to be tight on money with the move and everything, and that they expected me to keep helping with the bills for a while longer, until Tyler got settled. I swear I felt like they'd thrown a bucket of ice water on me. They were literally asking me to leave, to pay rent somewhere else, and to keep paying the bills for the house so Tyler could live there for free. I said no, obviously. I told them that if Tyler moved in, he would have to take over the expenses, or at least split them, because I wasn't going to pay for a house I didn't live in anymore. My mom got all dramatic, saying I was selfish, that family helps each other, that Tyler had moving expenses, that Victoria had just left her job, a bunch of excuses. That conversation ended horribly, with my mom crying and my dad quiet as always, and me feeling like the worst person in the world for not wanting to be exploited. The next few months were torture. My parents wouldn't stop insisting that I leave. They'd send me links to apartments. They'd ask me when I was going to start looking. Basically doing everything possible to make me feel uncomfortable in my own house. Or, well, in the house I thought was going to be mine someday. Tyler and Victoria came to visit in June, stayed in the guest room for a week, and it was super awkward. Tyler acted like it was already his house, changing channels without asking, eating my food from the fridge, those kinds of things that get on your nerves. In August 2023, my parents gave me an ultimatum. They told me that Tyler and Victoria would definitely move in September, and that I needed to be out by September 1st. I asked them again about the bills, and my mom told me, totally seriously, that they expected me to keep paying the mortgage and main utilities for 6 more months while Tyler got settled. 6 months. They wanted me to pay like $15,000 so the brother could live comfortably while I paid rent somewhere else. That night, I didn't sleep. I was awake until 4 inches the morning thinking about my whole life, about how I'd always been the invisible son, about how I'd sacrificed everything to help my parents, and they were just discarding me like I didn't matter. And that's when I decided, you know what, if that's how they want to play it, fine. I started looking for apartments in secret, found a small but decent one like 20 minutes away, rented it, and didn't tell my parents anything until 3 days before September 1st. I told them I was leaving, that I'd found a place, And when my mom smiled, all relieved, and asked me when I was going to transfer September's mortgage payment, I told her I wouldn't. That starting in September, they or Tyler would have to take care of all the bills because I didn't live there anymore and had no legal responsibility to pay anything. My mom went crazy, started screaming about how could I be so cruel, that I was going to leave them on the street, that she never thought I could be so selfish. My dad looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything to defend me, as always. On August 31st at midnight, literally at midnight because I wanted to make sure it was technically already September, I packed all my stuff in my car and left. I left the keys on the kitchen table and blocked my parents, Tyler, Victoria, everyone in my family on my phone, social media, email, everything, complete cutoff. I moved into my new apartment, and it was weird because for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe. The first few days were quiet, like I thought maybe my parents would get the message and stop bothering me. But then they started showing up at my work. My work. My mom came first, crying in the reception area, saying she needed to talk to me urgently. Security had to escort her out. Then it was my dad, calmer but just as annoying, saying I was being irrational. They threw him out too. Then they started sending me certified letters to my work, emails from new accounts I hadn't blocked, basically harassing me. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a number I didn't know, and I answered thinking it was work. It was Aunt Clara, my mom's cousin, someone I'd basically never had much of a relationship with. She told me we needed to talk, that what I was doing was terrible, that my parents were desperate. I told her it wasn't my problem and was about to hang up when she dropped something that froze me. Your mom told me about the second mortgage they took out to help Tyler. They're terrified of losing the house. Second mortgage. Those words just floated in my head for a moment. I asked her what the hell she was talking about, and she seemed to realize she'd messed up. Like, my parents obviously hadn't told me about that, she explained, all nervous. That apparently my parents had taken out a second mortgage on the house like 2.5 years ago to give Tyler money when he and Victoria were going through financial problems in Austin. They'd given him $40,000, according to Aunt Clara. I hung up and drove straight to the bank where my parents had their mortgage. I spoke with a manager, explained the situation, and asked if there was a second mortgage on the house. At first, they told me they couldn't give me that information because it wasn't my house. But when I explained that I'd been paying the main mortgage for years and had all the payment receipts, they agreed to verify. And yes, there was a second mortgage, taken out in March 2021 for $40,000, with monthly payments of $380. I did the math right there in the bank and almost threw up. I had been paying that second mortgage without knowing it for 2 years. My parents never told me it existed. They'd just give me the total of the bills each month and I'd pay without questioning, trusting them. They'd basically stolen almost $10,000 from me that went directly to Tyler, their golden child, while telling me the house would be mine someday. The betrayal I felt in that moment was indescribable. I left the bank in total shock, drove back to my apartment, and sat on the floor of my empty living room because I still hadn't bought much furniture. I was there for like 3 hours, processing everything. My parents had used me for years, had taken my money to give it to Tyler secretly, and then they'd kick me out of the house when it was no longer convenient to have me there. And the most sickening part was that they wanted me to keep paying for everything even after I left. October and November passed without me knowing much about what was happening at my parents' house. I figured Tyler was paying the bills, or that my parents had found some way to survive. I focused on my work, on fixing up my apartment, on basically starting my life over. I was dating someone for the first time in years, a girl named Jessica, who worked in the same building as me, and things were going well. I still thought about my parents all the time. I'm not going to lie, but I was trying to move forward. But then, right before Christmas, I got a call from the bank. An official number this time, during business hours. It was the manager I'd spoken with before, the one who'd confirmed the second mortgage thing. He told me that my parents' house was in foreclosure proceedings because no payments had been made on either mortgage since September. He asked me if I was interested in saving the house, since I had a payment history and could technically qualify to assume the mortgages or refinance. My first reaction was like, screw them, why should I save their house after everything they did to me? But then I thought of something. If the house went into foreclosure, my parents wouldn't just lose their home, they'd also lose any equity they had, and I'd lose the 3 years and thousands of dollars I'd invested, thinking it would be mine someday. That bothered me, the idea that Tyler would indirectly steal even that from me. I called my dad from a work phone, because they still had my personal number blocked. He answered immediately. His voice sounded desperate. I told him who I was, and he started talking fast, saying they needed help. That Tyler hadn't been able to pay the mortgages, that they were going to lose the house, that please I should reconsider and help them. I told him I'd consider it, but under my conditions, non-negotiable. My conditions were simple. If I saved the house, they would have to transfer ownership completely to my name. The house would be legally mine, and they'd live there basically as my tenants. They'd pay their fair share of expenses, $800 a month to cover utilities, taxes, maintenance, and I'd take care of the mortgages until I could refinance. Tyler would have to leave or pay market rent, no less. And everyone would have to respect me as the owner of the house, none of this treating me like the son they can manipulate. My dad was quiet for a long time and then said he needed to talk to my mom about it. I gave them a week to decide. During that week, apparently there was huge drama in the house. My mom didn't want to accept, said it was ridiculous, that I was being vindictive and cruel. Tyler was furious because it meant he'd have to pay or leave. Victoria, as I found out later, was the only one who told everyone it was a fair deal considering everything that had happened. My dad called me on day 6, one day before my deadline, and said they accepted. I hired a lawyer because I wasn't going to trust my parents' word ever again, and we started the property transfer process. I paid the overdue mortgage payments, like $7,000 with interest and penalties, straight from the money I'd been saving during the months in my apartment. The bank agreed to the transfer once they saw my credit history and payment record. In January 2024, the house was officially transferred to my name. I have the documents framed in my apartment. I don't know if that's weird, but it makes me happy to see them. I went to the house for the first time in months to talk to everyone in person about the new rules. My parents looked miserable, like they wouldn't look me in the eye. Tyler had that defensive attitude he always has when he knows he screwed up. Victoria was quiet in a corner. I told my parents their rent was $800 a month, due on the first of each month, no exceptions. I told Tyler his rent was $900 a month if he wanted to stay, or he could leave whenever he wanted. Tyler exploded, started yelling that it was ridiculous, that $900 was too much, that I was being an asshole. I told him that $900 for a room in a 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood was more than reasonable, and that if he didn't like it, the door was right there. Tyler refused to pay. He lived in the house during February without paying a cent, probably expecting me to give in or for my parents to defend him. But I wasn't the same anymore. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me ever again. In March, I filed a formal eviction notice. Tyler was furious. My parents begged me to reconsider, but I stood firm. The legal process took like 6 weeks, and in April, Tyler finally packed his things and left. Here's the interesting part. 2 weeks after Tyler left, Victoria left him. She found out that Tyler had been wasting their money on, I don't know what, probably sports betting or something, and she'd had enough. Now Victoria lives in an apartment near downtown, has a new job, and, according to what I heard through a mutual friend on Facebook, she's much happier. It was never really about me or the house situation. Tyler was just a financial disaster, and she finally saw it. Tyler now lives with a friend in a tiny apartment, works at a sales job he hates, and according to my mom, because yes, I did start talking to her again eventually, but with strict boundaries. He's bitter with everyone. My mom still tries to make me feel guilty occasionally, saying things like, Tyler is going through hard times, or your brother needs family support. But I just remind her that the house is mine, that they agreed to the terms, and that I'm not going to be anyone's emotional or financial lifeline in this family ever again. My parents pay their rent on time every month, actually. I think they finally understood that I'm not playing around. My relationship with them is functional, I guess. It's not warm or close. It probably never will be again, but it exists. I go to the house every 2 weeks to check that everything's okay, that there are no maintenance issues, that kind of thing. It's weird to be the owner of the house where you grew up and treat your parents basically like tenants, but it's the reality they created. Last week I went to the house because there was a problem with the water heater. My dad was there alone. My mom had gone out somewhere, and while the plumber worked, my dad and I sat in the living room. There was an awkward silence for a while, and then he said, "I'm sorry about how things turned out." It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't him admitting everything they did wrong, but it was the closest to an apology I'm probably going to get from him. I told him I was sorry too about how things turned out, but that I didn't regret my decisions. I told him I spent my whole life being invisible, being used, and that finally taking control of my life was the best thing I could have done. He nodded, didn't say anything else, and when the plumber finished, I left. I don't know what will happen in the future with my family. Tyler and I don't talk. We probably never will again. My mom and I have a superficial relationship of occasional text messages. My dad and I are cordial when we see each other. It's not the perfect family from the movies. It's not even a functional family, but it is what it is, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I have my own life now. I have control over my finances. I have a house in my name, and for the first time since I can remember, I feel like my decisions matter, and that my life is mine, not Tyler's, not my parents', mine. And that, I guess, is enough for now.